Hi, and thank you for watching us here at Tax Talk UK, where we talk about all things tax and help you to understand how the various tax processes, rules and regulations apply to you as an individual. So today I'm going to talk about income tax rates and bands to help you to understand how they work, and so you can work out how they apply to you individually. Before I do, if I could please ask you to take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you'll easily be able to refer back to this information if you should need to, as well as being able to access other information that we have on a whole host of different topics aimed at supporting people in a whole range of different circumstances. And you will find those topics loosely catalogued in our playlist section of our YouTube channel. So back then to income tax rates and bands. So I'm going to be talking about some specific rates and bands today as they apply currently, but in the description I'm just going to pop a link to the section on gov.uk where you can find the current income tax rates and bands as they so you can check just in case there have been any changes. But really the whole purpose of the video is to help you to understand how the rates and bands work and how to work out where you fit and how to work out how much tax that you could expect to pay. So as we've talked about in other videos, income tax in the UK is cumulative. And what that means is that for the entire tax year, we are going to add up all of your income, and that is going to determine your income for the tax year, and that is going to determine the top band of tax that you will fall into, as well as other factors. Another important thing to mention is I am focusing today on the income tax rates and bands, just because we've had quite a lot of questions on how this works. There are different allowances and rates for savings interest and for dividend income, for example, although they do still contribute to determine your total income within the tax year. They have their own allowances. And also to mention other things that may change your personal allowance, reliefs and allowances that you may claim. Again, we cover those in a different video. So if you're not aware of things that you may be able to claim, then do check that out. But as I say, today I'm just wanting to focus on talking through the current income tax rates and bands so that you can understand how those apply. So generally in the UK, if you're a tax resident in the UK, you could expect to receive a personal allowance. That is currently £12,570, and you don't pay any tax on that amount. So if you think about it, then the tax that's charged on your personal allowance amount is 0%. So that can make it easier to work out how that fits in if you're earning above the personal allowance. Now, there are things that can change your personal allowance. So as I mentioned just a minute ago, certain income tax reliefs that you may be claiming, things like pension contributions, gift aid. They may change your personal allowance to be able to give you those reliefs. Also, if your income is over 100,000, once your income hits 100,000, you will start to lose your personal allowance. So for every £2 of income, you will lose £1 of your personal allowance. So as the current personal allowance is 12,570, then it's easy to see that once your income gets to 125,140, that being twice the personal allowance above the 100,000, that you will by then have lost all of your personal allowance. So you'll no longer have any income tax at that 0%. So the first 12,570, that's the current personal allowance, is charged at 0%. Then the next band is called the basic rate, or sometimes referred to standard, or 20% tax. That is obviously comes from the fact that currently standard rate is 20%. So anything over your 12,570, assuming your personal allowance is standard, up to 50,270, you will pay 20%. Now, the amount that falls within the personal allowance, that's still taxed at 0%, assuming that you haven't had any adjustments to your personal allowance. So say, for example, if your total earnings were 13,570, so £1,000 exactly over your personal allowance, then you would pay no tax on the first 12,570, and the next £1,000 you would pay 20%. So you would pay £200 tax. So you'll still would pay only the 0%, so nothing on the income up to your personal allowance. It's only the amount over that you would pay 20%. Now, if your income is less than 50,270, then that's as much as that you need to know, that the first 12,570 is going to be no tax, and anything above that is going to be 20% of basic rate, standard rate tax. These are just different words that describe the same amount. So if your income then goes above 50,270, and just to mention, if your income is over 50,000 and you receive child benefit within your household, please do check out the information that we have on the high income child benefit charge. But again, I'm trying not to go off at too many tangents and stick to explaining the income tax rates and bands. So once your income is over 50,270, then you move on to the higher rate tax, which is currently 40%. Sometimes again known as high rate tax, or 40%, the 40% band. And so again, in the same calculation, your personal allowance, assuming that you're still entitled to that, normally you will pay no tax on the amount that falls within that. And then up to 50,270, so between 12,571 and 50,270, you will still pay 20%. It's only the income over the high rate tax band that you will pay 40% tax on. And again, there are scenarios where your threshold or the banding may increase. Things like if you've made personal pension contributions, if you have gift aid. And again, we do cover that in a different video, so do check that out if that's relevant to you. But then anything over the 50,270, so anything that falls in the high rate tax band, you will pay 40% on that amount. So remember that the tax is cumulative, so we're adding your total income for the tax year. As I mentioned earlier, once you hit 100,000, you will start to lose some of your personal allowance. And then the next band is additional rate, which is currently 45%, and that kicks in at 125, 140, which if for those that were paying attention earlier, you will also notice that is the point where you've also lost your personal allowance. So between 100,000 and 125, 140, you will be paying 40% tax, but you will also be losing your some of your personal allowance, which obviously is going to additionally increase the tax that you're paying. And then anything over 125,140 is going to be taxed at 45%. So sometimes the banding is referred to thresholds, and perhaps this is where it can cause confusion, because if you think of it as banding and actually think that in those bands, the income that falls in those bands, that is what it's going to be charged at. So it's not a case that if you go into high rate tax banding, that you will pay high rate tax on all of your income. You still will be allowed to pay 0% on your personal allowance, and 20% on the basic rate, for example. So it's important to understand what the bandings are, assess what your total income is for the year, and that will help you to understand which rates that you are going to pay tax on. And we cover in another video how, if you are employed and taxed via PAYE, how your tax code helps to try to collect the right amount of tax throughout the year, so that at the end of the year this is all being collected. But if you are self-employed or within self-assessment, or for other reasons your tax isn't taxed at source, or you have various income sources that push you over into the different bandings, over those thresholds, but not per employment, it helps you to be able to work out what your liability is likely to be for the tax year. So when you complete your self-assessment tax return, or your advisor does that for you, if you have someone to do that, at that point you will receive your calculation. But of course that is going to be after the point that you've earned the income. So it is prudent to be able to have an idea of what your liability is likely to be. So understanding how the bands work and the rates work, understanding your total income for the tax year, and then being able to know, roughly calculate what your tax liability is going to be, does help you to plan for this. And if you are PAYE, so your tax is collected for your tax code, again, we talk in another video about understanding your tax code, but knowing what your total liability is going to be for the year does help you to understand whether your whether you're on track to pay the right amount of tax. If your tax affairs are fairly straightforward, and your income is under 100,000, it is quite straightforward to be able to calculate your tax, because you're just going to be looking at, as I ran through earlier, what amounts you are going to have no tax to pay on, i.e. your personal allowance, currently anything up to 12,570. And then you're going to know that anything over that, up to 50,270, you are going to pay standard rate. So that is very straightforward. Anything over the 50,271, you start to pay 40%. And this is where things start to come in that can cause confusion, can cause complications with the tax codes, and things like your high income child benefit, if your income's over 50,000, things like if you've made personal pension contributions or gift aid, that will adjust your high rate tax starting band. And then once you go over the 100,000, starting to lose your personal allowance, once you have lost that, and then you're into also 45%. So it can get quite complicated. So the thing to do really is to take all of those complications outside of the calculation, just purely look at what your income is in total for the year, apply those bands, and then look at anything that changes your personal scenarios. So things like the high income child benefit charge, things like gift aid and pensions. So it can be more straightforward to just first of all look at what the tax liability is going to be, and then look at other things that may apply to you. If your tax affairs are complex and you find it a struggle to keep on top of it, it can be invaluable to engage the services of somebody that is able to help you with that, somebody that's able to look at your personal scenario and make sure that you are claiming all allowances and reliefs that you're allowed to claim. And of course, as we always say, if you are engaging somebody to help you, please make sure that they are qualified for what they're helping you with, that they are a member of a professional body if applicable, and that they hold indemnity insurance. So I hope this helps you to understand how the bands work. As I say, if you're not watching this video as it's made, then you can see the link in the description to make sure that the banding and the rates are the same, but still the same principle will apply. So thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.